I think academia thinks that it stopped teaching wisdom, or academia thinks that it stopped telling its students how to live their lives. But in fact, I don't think that's true at all. It is still in the business, though it's not really aware that it is, of a kind of moral formation, of a kind of character formation. It's just a very, very different kind of moral formation and character formation from what we used to think, but it's a wisdom of sorts. Now, I don't think it's wise at all. I think it's the absolute reverse. But I think that is part of what's happening. There is this spirit afoot in all our Western institutions, but particularly in our universities, convincing young people that their primary ambition should be to change the world. Whether they're studying Jane Austen, whether they're studying nuclear physics, the ultimate ambition of all of that is not that the study of those might be intrinsic goods for themselves, and might just expand their minds and understanding of the world, but somehow have to be instrumentalized into changing the world in some way, making it more just, bringing social justice about in the great new dawn of progressive emancipation. And I think, my own view is that the world would be a much better place if there were fewer people trying to change it the whole time, broadly speaking. I tend to go with my favourite Prime Minister, who's the Lord Salisbury of the late 19th century, whose basic political philosophy was most things turn out for the worst, most change turns out for the worst, and therefore it is our responsibility to ensure that absolutely nothing happens at all. Now, that's probably slightly extreme, but of course a lot of these ancient universities were built on the sense of that they were stables for moral wisdom, stables for a kind of moral formation, and that wisdom was at least as important as mere knowledge, and that to be part of a university was to be part of Christendom, from the early days of the Benedictine scriptoria that were preserving not just the Christian but also the pagan literary inheritance. There was a sense that the life of the mind was also a kind of participation in the life of the divine mind, and that it was sustained by a sense that the pursuit of knowledge and truth had a kind of an intrinsic benefits, and brought with it and brought wisdom with it. We're much more allergic to that these days. That would seem to be, imposing one's morals too much on one's students, and certainly I don't make much of an attempt to advise my students on what I think the wise course of action might be, unless they really ask me. What I do try to do, though, is teach the canon, and I think there is a canon. They may be a bit blurred at the edges, but I think a canonical text when you see it. And so teaching the Nicomachean Ethics, teaching Plato's Republic, teaching Plato's Phaedrus, teaching Augustine, teaching Aquinas, starting there anyway. It's not where I finish, but I think we make sure in the first year that the students have a strong foundation in those texts, and they're not approaching those texts in some sort of clever revisionist way, or some reductive way, or as if they were just sort of dusty museum pieces, but really as sources of truth and of wisdom that can energize and can be transformative in their own lives. I do try to teach them that way. You teach these texts with respect, and they are transformative. And so wisdom comes, as it were, at one remove. If somebody accuses me of saying, "Oh, you're just imposing your classical sort of traditional way of thinking on these students," I say, no, I'm not. I'm just teaching Aristotle. And it's true that a broadly conservative outlook is, broadly speaking, the spirit and attitude of the classical canon, at least up until the Enlightenment, at least up until the 17th and 18th century.